to invite you into a different way of thinking tonight. When we speak about fat burning, we are really speaking about transformation, about energy, about the fundamental ways your body negotiates with the world around it. But before we can understand what truly works, we must first understand what fat actually is. Not as an abstract enemy to be conquered, but as a biological reality that exists for profound reasons written into your evolutionary past. Fat is memory. Each adipocyte, each fat cell in your body, represents a conversation between your ancestors and their environment over millions of years. In times of scarcity, those who could store energy survived. Those who could not perished. You are here because your lineage mastered the art of storage, of preparation, of hedging against uncertainty. This is not a flaw in your design. This is the very reason you exist. And yet, we find ourselves in a peculiar moment in human history where food has become so abundant, so readily available, so engineered for palatability, that this ancient survival mechanism now works against our well-being rather than for it. The question that brings us together tonight is not how to override this mechanism through force or trickery, but how to understand it so deeply that we can work in harmony with it. And to do that, we need to start at the beginning, with energy itself. Every moment of your existence requires energy. Your heart beats roughly 100,000 times each day. Your brain consumes about 20% of your total energy despite being only 2% of your body weight. Your liver performs over 500 different metabolic functions. Your muscles contract and relax with every movement and every breath. Where does this energy come from? It comes from the breakdown of molecules, glucose, fatty acids, even amino acids when necessary, into a universal energy currency that your cells can use. Fat represents the most concentrated form of stored energy available to biological systems, containing more than twice the energy per gram as carbohydrates or protein. Understanding this changes the conversation. Fat is not inert baggage. Fat is potential energy, waiting. The question becomes, what signals tell your body to release this potential energy versus what signals tell it to continue storing more? Here we encounter the first critical myth that needs dismantling. The myth suggests that fat burning is primarily about calories consumed versus calories expended, a simple equation of energy balance. While energy balance is certainly real, you cannot defy the laws of thermodynamics. This framework is dangerously incomplete because it treats your body as a passive container rather than as an active, responsive, adaptive system. Your metabolism is not a furnace that burns fuel at a fixed rate. Your metabolism is a network of feedback loops, hormonal signals, enzymatic reactions, and genetic expressions that constantly adjust based on the information your body receives. Think about it this way. If you simply reduce the amount of food you eat, yes, you create an energy deficit. But your body does not merely respond by burning stored fat to make up the difference. Your body also responds by reducing energy expenditure. You feel colder because your body decreases heat production. You feel more fatigued because your body conserves energy by reducing spontaneous movement. Your thyroid hormone production may decrease, slowing your metabolic rate. Your reproductive hormone production may decline because in times of perceived scarcity, reproduction becomes a lower priority than survival. These are not signs of failure. These are signs of profound biological intelligence responding to what it perceives as threat. This brings us to the central paradox of fat loss. The very act of trying to lose fat by drastically restricting food can trigger adaptations that make losing fat more difficult. So what is the alternative? The alternative is to send different signals, to create conditions where your body feels safe releasing stored energy rather than clinging to it desperately. Insulin emerges as perhaps the most important character in this story, though its role has been both oversimplified and demonized in popular discourse. Let me be clear, insulin is not the enemy. Insulin is essential for life. Type 1 diabetics who cannot produce insulin will die without insulin replacement. What matters is not whether insulin exists in your body, but rather the pattern, the rhythm, the chronic elevation versus periodic rises and falls. When you eat food, particularly carbohydrates, your blood glucose rises. This is detected by beta cells in your pancreas, which release insulin. Insulin acts like a key, unlocking cells to allow glucose to enter. Muscle cells take up glucose for immediate use or storage. Liver cells take up glucose and can convert it to glycogen, or, if glycogen stores are full, to fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis. Fat cells take up glucose, and the presence of insulin also signals these cells to store fat and inhibits the release of stored fat. This is normal, healthy, appropriate metabolic function. The problem arises with chronic elevation. If you eat frequently throughout the day, if your meals are dominated by refined carbohydrates that spike blood sugar rapidly, if you snack between meals, if you consume sugary beverages, then insulin never has a chance to fall to baseline levels. Your cells become less sensitive to insulin's signal, requiring more insulin to achieve the same effect. This insulin resistance creates a vicious cycle where higher insulin levels are needed to manage blood glucose, and these higher insulin levels further promote fat storage and inhibit fat release. The insight here is profound yet simple. Creating periods where insulin levels are low allows fat burning to occur more readily. This does not require complex supplements or exotic foods. This requires time. Time between meals, time overnight while you sleep, perhaps extended time during deliberate fasting periods. During these low insulin states, your body can more easily access fat stores, breaking down triglycerides into fatty acids that can be oxidized for energy. But insulin is only part of the story. We must also consider cortisol, the hormone released in response to stress. Cortisol serves essential functions. It helps mobilize energy stores, it modulates immune function. It prepares your body for action. In acute situations, cortisol is your ally, but chronic stress creates chronic cortisol elevation, and this has profound metabolic consequences. Chronically elevated cortisol promotes fat storage, particularly visceral fat around your organs. It impairs insulin sensitivity. It can increase appetite and drive cravings for highly palatable, calorie-dense foods. It interferes with sleep quality, which creates additional metabolic disruption. This is where we must acknowledge that fat burning is not purely a physical phenomenon. Your mental state, your emotional well-being, your stress levels, your sleep quality, these are not peripheral concerns. These are central to the metabolic equation. A person who eats perfectly and exercises regularly but lives in a state of chronic stress and sleeps poorly will struggle far more than a person who eats reasonably well, moves moderately, but manages stress effectively and prioritizes sleep. Sleep deserves its own extended reflection here because it is so often dismissed or sacrificed in our culture. During sleep, particularly deep sleep, your body releases growth hormone, which promotes fat burning and muscle preservation. During sleep, your brain clears metabolic waste products. During sleep, your insulin sensitivity improves. When you sleep poorly or insufficiently, you disrupt these processes. Studies consistently show that people who sleep fewer than 7 hours per night have altered levels of leptin and ghrelin, the hormones that regulate hunger and satiety. Sleep deprivation makes you hungrier, particularly for high-calorie foods, and simultaneously reduces your willpower and decision-making capacity to resist those cravings. So we begin to see that effective fat burning is not about finding the right supplement or the perfect diet, but rather about creating conditions across multiple domains of life that allow your metabolism to function as it was designed to function. And one of those critical domains is movement. Exercise is often framed purely in terms of calorie expenditure, and this framing misses most of what makes exercise valuable for fat loss. Yes, physical activity burns calories, but the number of calories burned during a typical workout is often surprisingly modest. A vigorous hour-long session might burn 300 to 500 calories, easily replaced by a single large meal. If this were the only benefit, exercise would be a frustratingly inefficient tool for fat loss. But exercise does something far more profound. It changes how your body partitions nutrients. When you engage in resistance training, you create micro tears in muscle fibers. Your body responds by repairing and strengthening those fibers, and this process requires energy and protein. When you consume protein after resistance training, much of it is directed toward muscle synthesis rather than being converted to glucose or stored as fat. Over time, as you build lean muscle mass, your resting metabolic rate increases because muscle tissue is metabolically active even at rest. Resistance training also improves insulin sensitivity. Your muscles become better at taking up glucose from your bloodstream without requiring as much insulin. This alone can shift your entire metabolic landscape toward fat burning and away from fat storage. The effect persists for hours after you finish exercising, creating what some researchers call an afterburn effect, though the technical term is excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. Your metabolism remains elevated as your body repairs tissue, replenishes energy stores, and restores homeostasis. Cardiovascular exercise offers different but complementary benefits. Regular aerobic activity increases the number and efficiency of mitochondria in your cells. Mitochondria are the organelles where fat oxidation occurs, where fatty acids are broken down to produce energy. More mitochondria means greater capacity for burning fat. Cardiovascular exercise also improves your cardiovascular system's ability to deliver oxygen to tissues, and since fat burning requires oxygen, this enhanced delivery system supports greater fat oxidation. There is also something deeply important about the type of movement you choose. The best exercise is the exercise you will actually do consistently. A perfect program that you abandon after 3 weeks is worthless compared to a moderate program you maintain for years. Find movement that brings you some measure of enjoyment or satisfaction. Find movement that fits into your life rather than requiring you to completely restructure your life around it. Consistency over intensity is the principle that actually produces lasting change. Now we must talk about food composition. And here the conversation becomes both simpler and more nuanced than popular diet culture would have you believe. Protein emerges as perhaps the most important macronutrient for anyone interested in changing their body composition. Protein provides the building blocks for muscle tissue, for enzymes, for immune cells, for countless structural and functional elements in your body. When you consume adequate protein, you preserve lean mass even while losing weight. This matters enormously because lean mass is metabolically active tissue that supports a higher metabolic rate. Protein also has the highest thermic effect of food, meaning your body burns more calories digesting and processing protein compared to carbohydrates or fat. Protein is also the most satiating macronutrient, helping you feel fuller for longer and reducing overall calorie intake without requiring constant willpower. For most people, aiming for roughly 1.6 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day provides sufficient amino acids for muscle preservation and synthesis while supporting satiety. Dietary fat has been unfairly vilified in certain diet cultures and then excessively celebrated in others. The truth lies in nuance. Fat is essential for hormone production, for the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins, for brain health, for cellular membrane integrity. Very low-fat diets often lead to hormonal disruption and poor satiety. But fat is also the most calorie-dense macronutrient at 9 calories per gram. So excessive fat intake can easily lead to calorie surplus, even if that fat comes from healthy sources like nuts, avocados, or olive oil. Carbohydrates exist in a similar space of nuance. Your brain preferentially uses glucose for fuel. Your muscles can store carbohydrate as glycogen for high-intensity activity. Carbohydrates can support thyroid function and reproductive hormone production. The difference between helpful and problematic carbohydrate consumption lies primarily in the type and timing. Vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes provide carbohydrates along with fiber, micronutrients, and phytochemicals. These foods tend to produce more gradual blood sugar responses and contribute to overall health. Refined carbohydrates, sugary beverages, and processed foods provide carbohydrates in forms that spike blood sugar rapidly, promote insulin resistance when consumed regularly, and contribute minimal nutritional value. The timing of carbohydrate consumption also matters. Consuming carbohydrates around exercise, when your muscles are primed to take up glucose and replenish glycogen stores, tends to promote better partitioning of those nutrients toward lean tissue rather than fat storage. Consuming large amounts of refined carbohydrates during sedentary periods, when glycogen stores are full and energy demands are low, tends to promote fat storage. But beyond macronutrient composition, we must consider meal timing and frequency. The modern eating pattern of constant grazing, of eating from morning until night, of snacking between meals, never allows insulin to drop to baseline. Your body exists in a constant fed state, constantly processing nutrients, constantly storing. Contrast this with a pattern where you eat within a defined window each day, perhaps 8 to 10 hours, allowing the remaining hours for your body to shift into a fasted state where insulin drops, where cellular repair processes called autophagy can activate, where fat burning can predominate. This is not necessarily about eating less food, though that may happen naturally as you become more in tune with true hunger versus habitual eating. This is about changing the rhythm, creating periods of feeding and fasting that align more closely with the patterns your metabolism evolved to expect. Some people find success with skipping breakfast and eating their first meal at midday. Others prefer eating earlier and finishing dinner by early evening. The specific window matters less than the consistency of creating a fasting period. There is also something we must address about the emotional and psychological dimensions of eating. Food is not merely fuel. Food is comfort, celebration, connection, culture, memory. When we approach fat loss with a purely mechanistic mindset, we often fail because we ignore these deeper dimensions. The key is not to eliminate the emotional and social aspects of eating, but rather to develop awareness around them. To notice when you are eating because you are physically hungry versus when you are eating to soothe anxiety, boredom, or loneliness. To create space between the impulse and the action. Mindful eating practices can be transformative here. Eating slowly, without distraction, paying attention to the taste, texture, and satisfaction provided by food. Noticing when you feel satisfied rather than eating until you are uncomfortably full. These practices do not require restricting what you eat, but they often naturally lead to eating less because you become more attuned to your body's actual signals rather than external cues or habitual patterns. We should also talk about the metabolic adaptation that occurs during weight loss. because understanding this can prevent the frustration and sense of failure that many people experience. As you lose weight, your total daily energy expenditure decreases for several reasons. First, there is simply less of you to maintain. A smaller body requires fewer calories. Second, you may become more metabolically efficient, meaning your body learns to perform activities with slightly less energy expenditure. Third, there may be some adaptive thermogenesis, where your metabolic rate decreases beyond what would be expected from the reduction in body mass alone. This is not your metabolism breaking or being damaged. This is your metabolism adapting, which is what metabolisms do. They adapt to prevailing conditions. The implication is that as you lose weight, you may need to adjust your food intake downward or increase your activity level to continue progressing. This is normal and expected, not a sign that something has gone wrong. Plateaus are also normal and expected. Weight loss is not linear. You will have weeks where the scale does not move despite consistent effort. This happens because of water retention fluctuations, because of normal hormonal variations, because of countless factors that affect day-to-day weight. The scale is just one metric, and often not the most meaningful one. How you feel, how your clothes fit, your strength improvements, your energy levels, your sleep quality, your blood sugar stability, these are equally or more important markers of progress. Perhaps most importantly, we must talk about sustainability and self-compassion. Any approach to fat burning that you cannot maintain indefinitely is ultimately just a detour. You may lose weight temporarily, but if the method requires constant deprivation, if it makes you miserable, if it is incompatible with living a full and engaged life, then you will eventually abandon it and the weight will return. What works is not the most aggressive approach. What works is the approach you can integrate into your life as a permanent way of being rather than a temporary intervention. This requires releasing the all-or-nothing mindset that pervades diet culture. You do not need to be perfect. You need to be consistent enough that the balance of your choices trends in a health-promoting direction. You will have meals that do not align with your goals. You will have days or even weeks where stress or travel or celebration disrupts your usual patterns. This is not failure. This is life. What matters is returning to your health-supporting practices without guilt or shame, without feeling that you need to punish yourself or compensate through extreme restriction. Your body is not a problem to be solved through force. Your body is a biological system seeking equilibrium, seeking the resources and conditions it needs to thrive. When you provide adequate protein, when you move regularly in ways that challenge your muscles and cardiovascular system, when you create eating rhythms that allow periods of fasting, when you prioritize sleep, when you manage stress, when you approach yourself with curiosity and compassion than judgment, these conditions allow your body to release stored fat, not because you are forcing it to, but because it feels safe to do so. The myths about fat burning often promise quick fixes because quick fixes are appealing to sell. But your body does not operate on the timescale of marketing campaigns. Your body operates on the timescale of cellular adaptation, of habit formation, of gradual metabolic remodeling. Real change, lasting change, emerges from the accumulation of small, consistent actions over time. It emerges from understanding your own unique biology through patient observation. It emerges from building a life that supports health rather than undermines it. What really works for fat burning is not a secret or a trick. It is the patient application of principles that honor how your body actually functions, combined with the wisdom to recognize that you are not just a body, but a whole person navigating a complex world. The path forward is not about perfection. It is about progression, about learning, about becoming increasingly skilled at creating the conditions where health becomes the natural outcome rather than something you must constantly fight for.